Bamyasi, released November 1972. Matt, where are we at with the statistics on this?
Yeah, so whatever Josh just said, is ranked number 78 and 9th in the 1970s, so just one ahead of Foxtrot, which we just covered. Ranked number 9 in 1972. A cool 300 of all time, and I believe it's I had it here a second ago. I'll have to look this up. In Rolling Stone, it's in the 440s, I believe. I have it off the top of my head. I'll get back to you on that.
Great. So, CAN, this is their follow-up to Tago Mago, which we talked about last discussed in episode 13, which was probably like 4 or 5 episodes ago now, I think, based on all of our bonus episodes. And the title, as I said in the beginning, translates to Aegean okra in Turkish. And in fact, the album cover is a tin can of okra, so they're being very there's no subtext there with that.
On the nose.
Yep. The co-founder Holger Zuke, who was responsible for bass and editing on this, or in the group, says that this album reflects the group in a lighter mood compared to Tago Mago. I would agree with that based on what I heard. The singles include Spoon and Vitamin C. And Spoon was actually released as a single before this album and was a hit in Germany. It had been used as a theme song for a German TV thriller miniseries called Das Messer, which translates to the knife. So that's kind of why it got popular, and I can hear it as a theme song, knowing that when I listen to it. You guys might have to go back and tell me if you agree. It was recorded. This album was recorded in a large ex-movie theater. So they moved out of the castle and into a movie theater.
Well, we talked about prog rock and indulgences, right? I think krautrock has to be recording in
unusual,
unique locales. Yes.
Yeah. Trying for the unique sound qualities in different spaces. So the ex-movie theater was near Cologne in Germany, and they nicknamed it the Inner Space Studio. The recording process was not smooth, according to the band members, and not due to any tension among the band, but I guess they just basically ran out of time, and they rushed to finish the album, and they actually added Spoon as to the end due to a lack of material. Ermin Schmidt of the band said in an interview in 2006 that the studio, the sex movie theater, affected the sound, mainly that the drums sounded less heavy and the vocals and the instruments were more separated. As we said before, or I mentioned before, various artists have cited this album specifically as an influence, in addition to the other artists that we talked about, CAN as a whole. Stephen Malkmus of Pavement, Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth, Jeff Barrow of Portishead, and one of my favorite bands, Spoon, takes their name from this song, Spoon, and cites CAN as an influence, and I can totally hear Spoon in this album. That's really all I have, because it's such a short turnaround time from their last album, and there wasn't too much background otherwise with the band. So let's start with Matt this time. What did you think of CAN-EGE Bamyasi?
So first off, this is 454 in Rolling Stone. So just
okay,
want to clear that stack. I like this album. I like this album a lot more than Tago Mago, and not because I mean Tago Mago, again, the downside of that for me was the second half of the record.
Right.
I did like the first half very much. This one is, I mean, there's more songs. They're shorter songs too, right? I mean, you only have 2 songs that are over 9 minutes long. Everything else is like 3, 4, 5. So much shorter songs. So kind of a different listen in that regard. But man, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in here. And I absolutely, you said Pavement, Josh, and the Sing Swan Song totally sounds like a Crooked Rain, Pavement type song for me. It's like, I can absolutely hear that influence there. And one of the things I love so much about these guys is the drumming. There's just the drums are, a very prevalent instrument throughout all of their music, when they're actually doing music and not just making noises and stuff. But it's just so cool. It's very offbeat. It's very, there's a lot of this interesting hi-hat stuff that they're doing with the drum kit, and it keeps me involved with the record and interested. There's not a lot of melody, and I am at the core a guy that's a fan that likes really good melodies and songs. So there's not a ton of that here, but there's just so many other interesting things happening that just draws me in, and a lot of that has to do with the percussion. At times I felt like this was like a jazz album. There's this almost like there's like some Miles Davis bitches Bruce sounding guitar stuff that's happening, in places here and there. A little bit more of a free form jazz sound in certain parts, but I was picking up on that a little bit as well, kind of incorporating that a little bit with some more avant-garde indie rock, type stuff here as well. But the last two tracks in particular really stand out. I'm So Green and Spoon are really they're probably for me the two most accessible songs, particularly Spoon. Just a very good song to end on. It's interesting that's the filler, that they just threw that on there, and that that actually becomes like a single. It's funny how that happens a lot. The only downside here was Soup, and that's only because the second half of the song, that's really the only part of the album where they go into more of the experimental noise. Right. And they kind of deviate from the actual music. But the first half of Soup I really liked. I thought that was I thought that was a cool song. So I like this. I am a guy that likes indie rock and kind of offbeat, interesting, different stuff. Bands that I like. Something like a Radiohead, like a Pavement, stuff like that. I'm seeing a lot of that influence here, and so it doesn't surprise me that those bands really like these guys. So thumbs up for me. I wouldn't say that I love it, but it's certainly interesting. I would go back to this, and I'm glad I was listening to it.
All right.
Yep,
what about you, John?
I definitely see the influence of this album much more than I did in Tago Mago. It's a much, which I can't say, by the way, without thinking of like Wango Tango, right? Every time
I know, right? Yeah.
But so anyway, aside there. But the first one I had to really strain to hear where the influence would come from. This one, definitely Berlin era Bowie. You can hear quite a bit because it starts to tighten up the sound a little bit, and it's not hard to figure out where a song like, say, Sound and Vision would come from later in Bowie's career, for example, and what this sounds like. And I know that the German rock of this period was really what influenced Bowie when he was over there in '76 just recording. I also started to notice some of the hallmarks of the sounds and sort of that music concrete, but a more focused version of it that I would hear in early Sonic Youth, like Evil and Sister Sonic Youth. But to give you some examples too, I don't know how well you guys know the song Bull in the Heather by Sonic Youth, but it kind of has like a piece where it's like 10, 20, 30, and Kim Gordon's going, and then it stops and it goes this like dun, 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 and there's this crackling sound behind it, like that's right from this album. Also, the beginning of Sour Times by Portishead, which Josh mentioned, that how it comes in with that creaking sound, sort of, that's a sound that I heard in this, so I started to be able to put together pieces of sounds. You mentioned Pavement too, like that's not always a compliment for me to say something sounds like Pavement, but you're right, Matt, that with that, even Sing Swan Song, the wordplay, sounds like, Slanted and Enchanted or Crooked Rain, you know what I mean? And so like I can't help but wonder, maybe is that, a little bit of a piece of it too. But I did like this album. I'll start, so let me say this. I hated Soup. I hated its placement on the album as well. It was like the album was running really well from 1 to 4 and ended, in my opinion, with Spoon that was good. And there was parts of I'm So Green I like, but Soup just ground it to a halt to the point where I was like, oh God, are we going to get a second half that's like that again? Right. Luckily it pulled it up. You guys haven't mentioned this. To me, by far the best song on this album is Vitamin C. That is an awesome song. It's interesting. It's for a 3-minute and 30-second song. It's super complex. I wouldn't say that it's pop as much as any sort of krautrock can be poppy. that has elements of
pretty
pop
catchy.
sensibility in it. You know, yeah, and it was. I actively looked forward to hearing that song the second time, and I wasn't really paying attention to the plays. And it's very interesting because if you look at this on Spotify, it has like 20 times the plays of any other song on this, which it makes total sense. I did not know that until I'm looking at it right now. But yeah, to me, that was the standout of this album. It's a great song. It's actually in the last like month and a half or so, it's one of my favorite songs we've done so far. So high compliment there. But yeah, I did like this one. I like this one better than Tago Mago. I know that it seems like what happens is with the German bands, and we haven't done Kraftwerk yet, right? But the other ones, it seems like the bio for all of them seems to be you do your weirdest and most avant-garde and hardest, most impenetrable stuff in your first one, and then you slowly become more accessible with each album afterwards. And certainly that fits the trend here on this one. So yeah, this one, it's funny. This week, I we'll talk about Quadrophenia, but I actually scored Foxtrot and this album exactly the same. They both got 47s for me out of 60. So I looked at them as direct complementary, which is thumbs trending slightly up, more than slightly, like not definitively, but trending in the right direction up. So yeah, I'm on board with this one.
Yeah, as I I had a bit of trepidation coming into listening to this album, as I told you guys on the road trip. I didn't
that
want to
long
listen
car
to
ride, a lot of can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if you had to listen to the first one, I can understand why.
But I was really surprised by this album. I really liked it. It reminded me of so many other artists too. I feel like the Velvet Underground influence was apparent on this album, especially in that first track, Pinch. It also kind of reminded me of Cake a little bit, that first track. I think what I really responded to overall in this album is kind of their rhythmic beats and their hypnotic, not melodies, just the hypnotic beats that they have throughout this album. It's very like electronica. It does definitely remind me of Spoon, a band that I really like, and that made me appreciate it a lot. I thought Sing's Swan Song sounded a little bit like a Radiohead song to me, and they I hear what you're saying, Matt, about the jazz, but it also reminded me of some funk elements too. Like One More Night, they bring the funk into that a little bit with their beat and their drumming. And they're really, I guess this album is just much more pleasant to listen to overall than that first one that we listened to, Tago Mago.
Did you guys find it funny? Because I listened to Genesis before this one, that we listened to a Genesis album, and then there's a song called One More Night on the album afterwards.
I did say
that did make me chuckle.
I was gonna be like, I thought it was the Phil Collins song, but I didn't. But I know I've done that all the time, and you guys would have rolled your eyes, so I didn't go there.
I'll make the joke for you, Matt.
There you go. I did notice
chuckle
that.
as that
But
came
did
up. I'm
sound
like, One More Night, really?
Yeah.
But this is more of like a regular album. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
it's 7 songs at 40 minutes. You do have a couple long ones, but the majority of them are like shorter songs, and there's some there it's a little bit more, it's more accessible, it's catchier, and it's still out there. I don't think that this is something that's for the masses, so to speak, but this is certainly a much more palatable album than their first one as an overall whole.
You know what I compare this to? You know how there's like, say, for example, you're a person that identifies with the goth lifestyle, right? There's, like, full-in goth, like, super, morbid, weird goth. Then there's one where you have tendencies of the dress and the outlook, right? But you can also operate in the mainstream world when you need to, right? And then there's, like, Hot Topic goth, where it's, like, derivative and not there. This is kind of, like, in that middle ground of what the goth, look and lifestyle would be, in the sense that it's weird enough that it's plenty weird and plenty avant-garde that you can scratch the itch on that, but it's not so far out that you're like playing to like such a niche audience. I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but this one gave me enough interesting avant-garde stuff that I appreciated it and liked being challenged, but not so much that the amount of challenge went into like chore as opposed to just challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I feel the same way. This is kind of the sweet spot where you get one song where they can't help themselves and want to go back to their old ways, but the rest of the songs are a just clear. They have a more clear vision. It's much more rhythmic, and I can get behind it. And it's not as, I guess, again, it's not as chaotic. And I really get on the vibe of this album more than I did on Tago Mago.
So the movie theater is a better place to record a record than in a castle?
Yeah, I mean, who knows what their next spot's going to be, but
Are we done with them? Is this we don't have more Can, do we?
is it? Yeah, I don't
What's
know.
that traveling studio? I feel like that could be.
No, we do. Oh, there's
We
one
do?
from 1973. Future Days is ranked number 94 in the 70s and number 10 in 73.
Okay, that's the next
so.
album after
All
this
right.
one.
One more Can.
We'll see where it goes.
We're in like peak krautrock coming up because we got a couple Kraftwerks coming and stuff. So we're gonna be
Nice.
definitive experts on the craft. Yeah,
Or at least we can see where the influences come from.
absolutely. We'll have basically gone through the entire, albums to listen to, right? We'll have covered basically every band you have to listen to be considered to be learned.
Yeah, and I just like looking at the first album, Tago, the Tago Mago album, or the first one that we covered, and that's ranked 150 overall. This is 300, and I'm like, man, really? Like I know some of these rankings, I kind of roll my eyes, and I'm thinking, there's just this. I don't know. To me, this is like a clear no contest. This is a better, it's a much better record than Tago Mago. Like objectively almost, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
We didn't even. Do you guys ever pay attention to the lyrics on this? Like, it sounds
No.
like when they sing that it's almost. I mean, it's in German, but it sounds so close to English. It's almost like some weird trick.
Is he throwing any English in there at all? I mean, I thought
don't
I
know.
heard some English words, but
They had
think
English
it's-
on the last album, but I don't know about this one.
Isn't really his singing though just to add another sound to the profile? Really, like I don't really look at him as him writing lyrics for profound thoughts, right? It's more like what sounds interesting sonically, in the that's how I perceive him. Now I own the right to be incorrect, but I can't help but think that has to be what they're going for there, right?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, his voice is not like the strongest. I mean, harmonious.
No, but that's kind of like that's what a Stephen Malcolm's voice is kind of like. It's like this. It's intentionally, off-putting or off. It's what is it? It's atonal or whatever. There's no.
Yeah.
It's almost like that's what a lot of people would say. He's got a terrible voice. It's a bad voice, right? Because he's not. It's discordant. It's not his voice. The notes that are coming out of his mouth are not matching the notes that are supposed to be there.
Well, because you're not operating off of traditional melody,
exactly.
So
right.
and so as a result, he operates outside of.
And that's what a lot of those bands later on, the indie bands, what they went for. They're just like, let's try to go a little off. Let's throw in a note or a vocal part here that's not expected, or like it sounds discordant. That's what the sound is. So and this is certainly influential on that.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about those bands, Matt. Down the road, because they show up quite a bit on.
They sure do.
Critical Darling lists in the late 80s and early 90s.
A modern band that doesn't sound very good that I popped into my head is Clap Your Hands and Say Yeah. I feel like his voice is very
it's very distinct. Or
yeah.
Billy Court, that's like, to me that's a little separate though, because I don't know if he's just like, I don't know. There's people that just have this like this voice that's trying to be distinct, and not.
Corrigan's not really fair though, because they're operating in melody. You know what I mean? Traditional melody, and
Right.
They're going for something different. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I think it's,
Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah, it does have a little bit more discordant notes in their music as well. So, yeah. But thumbs up for me. I like this. This is good stuff.
2 cans up, in my opinion.
2 cans.